Yeah, because the guy up top, as the rope gets slick, it's real rough. As it's slicking, so the guy on top
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to City Council. We're going to start with our usual invocation and our Pledge of Allegiance. And tonight we have the honor of Mr. Michael Piscini, our former council member, giving the invocation.
Your Honor, do we do the pledge first?
We're after you.
Okay.
You're on.
Ladies and gentlemen, we come before you today to give you honor and praise. You are the source of all that is good and the source of all of our blessings. Thank you for every gift that we have been given. We thank you for the opportunity to come and gather together this day. We ask your hand and blessing on this meeting. We ask that you would guide and direct our meeting so that it is full of wisdom, productivity, and respect for one another. Thank you for helping us to accomplish our work and our goals this day. And please bless all these good people up here making decisions. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Mayor, I'll be hearing confession 3 nights this week, so I know there's probably a few people out there that need it, so just give me a call.
All right, we got you. Thank you. We appreciate it. All right. Do we have any public announcements tonight? All right. I'd like to recognize Mr. Gary Booker sitting in for our city attorney tonight. Appreciate you being here. And I don't think we have Mr. Harhay on the line, correct? Okay. All right. We'll then move to our initial public comment period, which is devoted to agenda items only. Does anyone wish to speak in the initial public comment period? Yes, please.
Good evening, I'm Ainsworth Hunt. I have some areas of concern with agenda items 10 and 11. 10 appears to be changing an item with regards to our zoning and master plan, and it looks like it wants to take land that's currently allocated for recreational purposes and move it to solar, light industrial. I don't know, I'm just concerned about it. I'm a little suspect of the timing being a day before the election. And when I see also in item 11, changing areas of finances from one place to another, debt obligations to financial administration, that also causes me a bit of alarm and concern based on it being the eve of an election. I don't know if my alarm is unwarranted, but I'm concerned about these items. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Any others wishing to speak on an agenda item? Okay, seeing no one, will close our initial public comment period and we'll move to approval of the regular agenda. Madam City Clerk. Mr. City Manager.
No changes.
And Mr. City Attorney.
No change.
Come back to council.
Move for approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Next is approval of our consent agenda. Madam City Clerk.
No changes.
Mr. City Manager.
No changes.
Mr. City Attorney.
No changes.
Council.
I'm going to request item 2 be moved to the regular agenda for discussion.
Okay, no problem. Any further changes? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve with change.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. And I don't see any students out there, probably because we're off for the summer, most of them. So I guess we'll take item number 2 first, the consent agenda item. Mr. McManus.
Go ahead, Mr. Luttrell.
Mayor and Council, Keegan Littrell, Public Works Director. Before you tonight is item number 2 that pertains to subdivision 112, which is the cottages. It's a 2-part item. The first part is the acceptance of the Madrone property, or the property that abuts the Madrone Street, and that is being conveyed to the city, both parcels. And then the second part is the final acceptance and bond release of the cottages. For the first part, the properties there, when the final map came to council back in 2017 for the cottages, it was a requirement that they had a secondary access to the property, and it was also a part that they would convey those parcels to the city if they were to be able to obtain those, which they have and are conveying to us now. For the second part, the city has done their final review of the cottages, and everything is on the up and up, and it's up for your approval and acceptance.
Thank you. Mr. McManus.
Thank you for the information on that. This is something that has been in the works for some time now. There were numerous variances that were granted for this particular project. I know prior to being elected to City Council, I objected to some of the variances that were being given based on the way the land is out there. My concern is, too, that this project seems to have changed from its initial introduction. Initially, there was going to be a common area that would have a pool and a small seating area. That was eliminated. Parking was eliminated. This second entrance originally was not supposed to be a access point for the residents there. It was supposed to be for first responders to have access, or another access point. And that was being required because of the number of units that were in the development was going to restrict the movement of especially large pieces of firefighting apparatus. So that was the reason that was being done, at least based on my recollection of it. And here we have, these are, as I recall, these are very small pieces of land. I mean, we're talking like, what, maybe 5-8 feet across, and
I don't have the exact dimensions, but yeah, that sounds pretty familiar.
yeah, we're not talking about a large piece of land here. We're talking about little slivers of land that are between the public street and this development.
Correct.
My concern is that this is going to be turned over to the city in an unimproved state, and at some point the taxpayers are probably going to be asked to do the improvements on that, when the only reason for those improvements is the construction of that development. I believe that contractors, developers should be paying those costs rather than coming to the taxpayers and saying, here's some land, you go and do the improvements on it. It will make my development look better. I will benefit from that, but it will be at the cost of the taxpayers. So I have a real concern about that. I understand that the purpose of this is to allow a second entrance there. That probably should have been a requirement from the very beginning rather than just an emergency vehicle type entrance. But again, I have very serious concerns about the taxpayers being on the hook for doing improvements that are only required because a development has occurred. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, if not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve both resolutions, 6942 and 6943.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
That motion carries with one dissent from Mr. McManus. All right, we're on to the regular agenda then, and item number 8 is a presentation by Parsons Corporation to provide an update on the River Mountain Loop Trail Improvement Study. We have Mr. Michael Mays to introduce this.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In 2017, the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada hired Parsons Corporation to evaluate opportunities to link the 34-mile River Mountains Loop Trail to the Nevada State Railroad Museum and downtown Boulder City. Over the past year, Parsons, who was hired to conduct this project, has been meeting with stakeholders within Boulder City, including residents and businesses, to get their input on potential trail linkages between the River Mountain Loop Trail and the two areas I mentioned previously. Future trail extensions will not only provide Boulder City residents with additional hiking and biking opportunities, but also support local tourism efforts by linking users of the trail to downtown businesses. And so to provide you the presentation, JP Wheaton with Parsons is here to go over the presentation and answer any questions you might have. JP.
Thank you, Michael. And it was a pleasure working with Michael in Boulder City during this last year. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Got the presentation up. We look very excited to present the updates on this study today. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. There we go. So what we're going to discuss is a brief summary of the project overview, the development of the study and the outreach efforts, and then the final recommendations. So for the project overview, we just wanted to, before we get into the meat of the study, wanted to make some acknowledgments to the stakeholders that were involved, primarily Boulder City, RTC, the River Mountains Loop Advisory Council, and of course the Nevada State Railroad Museum, and some other ones that were involved as well, such as City of Henderson and Nevada Department of Transportation. As Michael mentioned, Parsons was the lead, but we also had LGA and CA Group assisting us. So what you see, one of the first things that we did was prepare a project mission statement, which was to identify improvements to connect the existing River Mountains Loop Trail to downtown Boulder City and to the Nevada State Railroad Museum, with the goal of enhancing the economic vitality of Boulder City. Right below that, what you see is a study area a map of the study area, the primary candidate routes that were evaluated, and then it was also important to note that the project wasn't done in an isolated state. We coordinated with the other ongoing projects such as the Boulder City Parkway, the museum, and the Linear Park. So now I'm going to touch on some of the development and outreach. Just a brief overview of the study approach. It involved three main phases. Phase one was conducting existing conditions and looking at forecasted conditions as well. Then we looked at system analysis and prepared preliminary concepts. And then the third stage was essentially refining those concepts to final concepts. And with each phase, as you can see, there was coordination with the stakeholder working group and community outreach. On that note, I'm going to pass this over to Craig, who's going to talk about our community outreach efforts.
Good evening. One of the things that we know when we do projects out in Boulder City is to make sure that you get plenty of public input, and this project is no exception. During each phase of the work, we had a series of public meetings, and we rotated between traditional public meetings and some pop-up meetings, which we went to an existing event where we would capture people that were already at that event. In the first phase of the work, we did a public meeting that was in conjunction with the Parks and Recreation, gave us the chance to use the gymnasium where we had a number of people come out and attend that. About 20 people showed up for that meeting. But to kind of make those meetings fruitful, we distributed flyers, and we made these special flyers that were distributed directly to businesses, and those were hand delivered so you can answer questions. But then we also put up flyers at the library, at the rec center, at the senior center, and most importantly probably at Starbucks, so that we could get people to see and to get out to those meetings. We also coordinated it with the Chamber of Commerce, There was a website that was set up about the project, as well as we hit it hard with social media. The first set of meetings, both the public meeting and the pop-up meeting was held at the Spring Jam, and we had a booth set up there and had really good turnout. Probably over 30 people came by our booth and actually spent time in the booth. So a lot of people came by the booth, but we had about 30 that came in. Those first set of meetings were about trying to understand the destinations. Where do people want to go when they get off of the River Mountains Trail, Loop Trail? Where do they want to go? And so it's probably not surprising. They wanted to go to fast food. They wanted to go to downtown. They wanted to go to the restaurants. And they mentioned Starbucks every single time. So we had people give us those kind of destination points. Then the second set of meetings, we had decided that the public meeting was not as well attended as the pop-up. So we did 2 pop-ups in the second phase of work. And one of the pop-ups that we decided that we wanted to get not just people from Boulder City, but people that would ride the trail on a larger scale. So we hooked into a bike ride called 3 Feet for Pete. And that was a fundraiser bike ride. And there was probably 400 cyclists out at that. And so we got a lot of really good feedback from people that we figured were more tourism based into Boulder City. So they would be on the trail and they would pop into Boulder City for goods and services. We asked them about kind of what routes they would like to get into Boulder City. And we got some really good feedback on those different routes. And we had a route along Veterans Memorial Drive. That was the favorite route. The second favorite route was on US 93 coming in. And then we had another route along Yucca Street, which did not receive as much support as those other 2. And I think they were really about the fact that when you are coming in from, say, Henderson before you hit the big hill, you make a decision to come into Boulder City. Once you've done the big hill, you're probably going to take the trail the rest of the way around. And the same thing would be as if you're coming up 93. Before you go and hit the big switchbacks in the big hill, you'd come into Boulder City. So those 2 kind of became the most important ones. We also were out here at the Worst Festival. In the wind, if you remember how bad the wind was that day, I about lost my pop-up tent that day. But it was great. We had about 30 people come to that, but there were a lot of people that came by and saw what we did. We handed out a lot of flyers for that as well. So I'll turn it back over to JP for some of the other meetings that we did.
Thank you, Craig. For phase 3 of our outreach, we were presenting our final concepts, and we worked with the Southern Nevada Bicycle Coalition, which has about 1,500 followers, and we organized our own bike event that took the group of folks that were interested around the study area, stopping at different locations so they could see the existing conditions and then describe what was their proposed improvements. Then we came back to the Boulder Dam Brewery. We had a social with boards that were up and got a lot of positive feedback from the folks there. We also did a business-focused outreach for the Enhanced Connections. One of those involved an on-site meeting with the Nevada State Veterans Home. They had one concern, and that was to make sure that our design accommodated any overflow parking for their facility. So we included that in the recommendations, and with that, they were very supportive. So let's get into the final recommendations. What you're looking at here is a system map. One of the key feedback that we got from stakeholders was to make sure that there was a high level of connectivity. So there's a whole system that's developed for this. The yellow lines that you see there would receive general improvements. They're lower cost improvements. Then the maroon lines, there's, see if this lights up. No, not on the screen, but you got A, which is along Veterans Drive and Veterans Memorial Drive. And then you've got Enhanced Connection B, which is that US 93 Boulder City down to the Nevada Way intersection, and Enhanced Connection C. And again, another thing to note is that this all ties into other projects that are going on in Boulder City, although it's not dependent on those projects. And this is just an overview of what's included. The elements, the general improvements would be applied to all the routes, and then the enhanced connections could include a protected bike path or buffered bike lanes, enhanced crossings, shading with rest areas, as well as public art, and even some trail lighting and landscaping. So the next couple of slides are going to be the actual improvements. The aerial views, I'll just talk about the connections. This is Veterans Drive, going from the existing trail along passing the Nevada State Railroad, Nevada State Veterans Home. There's two options there that it connects to Veterans Memorial Drive, which is segment 2, and that continues on to Boulder City Parkway. And if you take note, there's a blue arrow that's there. That's the location for the next 2 slides. It's going to show the existing conditions. This is looking up from Veterans Memorial Drive at the bridge. And then the proposed improvements are buffered bike lanes, landscaping, some trail lighting, a separated path to the right there for the more casual users. They feel safer. And then along the top of the graphic there is an enhanced connection, an enhanced crossing, and the trail that goes along the state home. And that brings us to Enhanced Connection B, which is along US 93, starting at Kazenbach Drive, heading south to Industrial Road, continuing to Canyon Road, and then onto the intersection and connecting to the museum. Again, the blue arrow that you see there shows what the view is now with the existing conditions. This is looking south into the Nevada Way intersection. And then the proposed improvements for Enhanced Connection B. What we're showing here was a very strong preference from the people we talked about, as having a separated facility off the road, even separating cyclists from pedestrians so that casual users can use one path, and then the cyclists can go at higher speeds at a separate path. And then it connects to the State Museum. This brings us to Enhanced Connection C. It's basically the intersection in Nevada Way, and what we noticed is that it's already fairly friendly for pedestrians and cyclists after that intersection. So there's a few basic enhancements that are recommended, such as improved signage for the trail system, a bike hub and some bike racks. But we understand that this intersection is really the gateway into downtown Boulder City, and it's going to be a very important component of this. So there's actually 4 different concepts that are phased in this study to improve the multimodal access across that section. And this is the ultimate version that's shown here. So it brings us to cost. Our team put together a planning level cost for each of the different enhancements, as well as general improvements for the full system. And it shows basically a low range to high range, because those can vary depending on what elements are selected. It's also very important, we understand, to provide Boulder City with flexibility of how to construct this project. And so this is one example of how it could be phased. 3 different phases. You could do it all at once, or depending on the funding and the increased number of trail users, you may do that in segments as well. And of course, what are the funding options that are available? This is a few that are on the RTC's Southern Nevada Regional Bicycle Plan list for state and federal funding, as well as regional funding options. So with that, I just want to say thank you for the time to present. We really enjoyed working on this project, and wanted to open up for any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Schuman?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and hard work on this. So can you help me understand where it crosses over US 93?
Let's see, can we bring the presentation back?
Because to me, that's one of the hardest parts about riding a bike in Boulder City, is crossing over 93.
So are you referring to that Enhanced Connection B?
Yeah, Enhanced Connection C, actually, improvements is the map I'm looking at here, which is the interchange of Buchanan 93 Nevada Way.
Sure.
That seems to be the only spot that I can tell where we would cross.
Yes, that's correct. So it would lead users from that red line is the existing River Mountains Loop Trail down on the west side, all the way to what would be the proposed location for the visitor center. And at that intersection is where you would have the people crossing across that intersection. And that's where we feel the improvements there would be very important, because right now there's a free right turn, which allows cars to go very quickly. So one of the recommendations is a phase 1 enhancements just under the current conditions, which would be low cost. Phase 2 would be removing that free right turn. And then also adding things such as pedestrian lead timing, which gives pedestrians a little extra time to cross. There's separated facilities for pedestrians and cyclists as you keep advancing. But to answer your question, that's the intersection where it would lead to. Because the goals of the study were to bring people both to the museum and into downtown Boulder City.
Okay. Were any other options kicked around about crossing over US 93, like down the hill a little further? Or?
There, we did look at near Colorado. In fact, that is one of the recommendations, is to offer people to cross from the west side into Colorado, because it's really a really good connection into the top of the north end of downtown.
Right.
And so if for that to be a safe option, the road would need to be redesigned similar to Boulder City Parkway with some traffic calming. There's a hill there where there's trucks that are sometimes coming down. So that was evaluated as well, and it's included. There was a lot of stakeholders who had some fears with putting any crossings anywhere else along the roadway here.
Almost like it would have to be a tunnel or a bridge to cross that major of a...
Yeah, there is actually a tunnel. Well, it goes on the ground a little bit farther north. It's not the. I mean, it works right now, but I don't think it's something that's going to attract the visitors off the trail as that rendering that you saw when you're along River Mountain Loop Trail and you see this beautiful connection. I think that's going to be something that'll attract them out.
Okay, and then just to be clear, how it crosses Boulder City Parkway is basically going to be a Veterans Parkway. That's where you'll.
There's another option at the Veterans Drive and then Veterans Memorial Drive that will connect to a proposed railway trail, so it doesn't have to cross. That's for the casual users, but then it would also cross Boulder City Parkway for the. And there's a type of cyclists who are very confident out on the road, and they would choose that option to connect to the Boulder City Parkway improvements. But with that, then you want to. One of the things we recommend is what's called a bite box. And it puts the cyclists in front of the traffic, so it gives them a little bit safer way of crossing that road.
And did you guys consult with our bike shops here in town? Those two mountain bike shops, or the one?
We did include them. We actually we stopped by their places at the beginning of the study with the flyers and talked to them about the different options.
Okay.
We also coordinated with the Southern Nevada Bicycle Coalition, which I'm one of the members and a chair of that. Which got 1,500 different people who are participating as members, I should say.
And I'm sure that this ties in well with Bootleg Canyon and all of that as well.
We also, somebody else that was very helpful for us was Scott Jarvis from the city of Henderson, who has done a lot of bike improvements, both from a user level and also from someone who works in a city and understands the trade-offs between improvements and cost and maintenance. So he was very helpful with the project.
Thank you. And last question, Mr. Mays, what's our next steps here with this?
This plan is really a roadmap for the city and our regional partners to identify funding opportunities in the future to implement it. One of the great things about this plan is Parsons has put it in such a way that it can be phased, that there can be lower level improvements that can be achievable early on, and as demand and interest increases, the city can look for greater funding opportunities to complete some of the other improvements.
Thank you. Any others? Mr. McManus.
I know from what Mr. Mays just said there that this is a phased project. For Boulder City, by Boulder City standards, we're going to have an awful lot going on out there over the next, 3-4 years. It sounds like you've taken into consideration things like the parkway improvements, the potential for the railroad museum. How do you see this project being able to fit in as those projects come online?
Well, we purposely designed the concepts so that they could be done independently or together with them. For instance, the railway trail, the linear park, if that doesn't happen, then people can still continue on the Boulder City Parkway. But they all tie in with them. In fact, our sub-consultants was LGA, Craig, who was part of the State Railroad Museum in Linear Park, and also CA Group, which helped, they designed the Boulder City Parkway. So our goal was to not have this in something that was an isolated think tank, but that we're all working together. Different elements can be done on their own, or it can all work together, and that was ultimately the goal.
One of the worst case scenarios is you have a nice bike path that ends at a rail line or something, and it just ends there.
Yeah.
So, well, it looks to be a nice project that fits in nicely with those other plans. I do appreciate the efforts that you made, your group made, to reach out to the cyclists, not just from Boulder City, but who regularly use those trails out there, and how they might become customers for some of our businesses here in Boulder City, as well as the other parts of the town.
Yes, we wanted to focus on the two aspects that Boulder City, making improvements for the community of Boulder City, but then also the goal of attracting people. So that regional feedback was important on what's going to take people off that 34-mile loop and decide to turn into Boulder City and spend money at the shops and the museum. So it was very helpful to get that feedback.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and Council, if I can just remind you that part of AB 84 was to fund the Train Museum in Linear Park out of the museum portion of that bond measure. This particular project of the Train Museum and Linear Park actually has 3 phases. I'm looking at our Community Development Director, if you could talk about Phase 3, that really hasn't talked or hasn't received much public wording, then maybe you can elaborate how that actually might tie this project in.
Well, with the governor signing AB 84 and $25 million being identified for the 3 phases that are related to the Nevada State Railroad Museum, Phase 3 that Mr. Noyola is referring to is the trail connection. And so as JP had mentioned earlier, the opportunity exists here to use some of that funding to help create that linkage between the River Mountain Loops Trail through the Lineal Park to the museum's Visitors Center. And so again, this plan helps to support all of those other efforts, and that can be a potential funding source for project completion.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I really appreciate your presentation and your outreach. It interested me to see that you were working on this about a year ago with respect to your outreach, and I'm so glad that Larry Bender and Jill Lagan are here tonight, because in our Economic Vitality Commission meetings years ago, we were talking about this and the connectivity way, I don't know how many years ago, and to see it kind of all come together tonight and all in this one meeting, and then the passage of AB 84, it's just, it's hard to describe what a neat feeling this is and what a big deal this is to see all the planning that's been that has happened over a period of many years just come together so well. And so there are many people I know who've, and I don't want to get too far off topic, because I know that we'll be talking about some other things later on in our meeting with respect to, or maybe in my public comment I was going to mention AB 84, but how the Railroad Museum and the Linear Park and this project all tie together so well. So I appreciate the job that you've done, the great graphics that you've given us so that we can see exactly what's happening, and I'm just excited for our city for the future, what this holds for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to express my appreciation. It was a great presentation. One of the things I wanted to point out was how fast this you guys really got on this. When we knew we already had the conceptuals for a linear park in conjunction with our railroad museum. That was, it was was planned and conceptual too, approved without funding by the state. But I want to say it was only about a year and a half ago that I was in a RTC meeting and saw the Spencer Greenway project, and that's kind of what clicked in my mind, saying, "Oh, we are doing a linear park like the Spencer Greenway project. Maybe the RTC could help us with that." And so RTC really got on it fast, got Parsons hired, and we really moved through this project relatively quickly, I think, in the big scheme of things, to give us, I think, lots of options here and flexibility going forward. And nothing's set in stone, of course, but all these things are kind of coming together. And as we see the linear park in conjunction with the Railroad Museum unfold, we'll be able to plan based on the options you've given us. And it sounds like we may even have some funding to help us do that already. So we'll see how it unfolds, but really appreciate the job that you've done on this.
Thank you. And you might be happy to hear that Spencer Greenway is also moving forward. So I've heard recently City of Las Vegas and Clark County are coming together to make that happen. So it's nice to see that you put effort into a planning study and it doesn't just sit on the shelf. We want to see these things recognized and become a reality.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further comments? All right. Thank you for being here today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, next is item number 9, consideration of bill number 1852, approving an amendment to the agreement between the City of Boulder City and Clark County regarding the Boulder City Conservation Easement, and we have Mr. Brock Armentrout to introduce that.
Thank you, Mayor. Brock Armentrout, your contracts real estate manager. This is an item that has been a long time coming. Several years ago, Boulder City entered into an agreement with, at the time, Sempra Generation for the development of a future solar facility south of the Copper Mountains 1, 2, and 4 projects. The option agreement was subject to several conditions, one of which was where they wanted to locate was currently encumbered by the Desert Tortoise easement. For the option to actually be exercised, they would have to convince the county and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that the easement boundary could be adjusted. As such, through coordination with Clark County and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, an independent ecological resources firm was hired to do a study of the subject area, as well as other potential areas to adjust the boundary to make up for what was being exacted. The bar that they had to meet was equivalent or improved habitat. So as they reviewed this site, roughly 1,150 acres, they evaluated another site shown on the map in that light blue color. It's approximately 1,900 acres to determine if that was equivalent or improved habitat. After roughly a year-long study in consultation with the county and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, they came to that conclusion that to get equivalent or improved habitat, it wouldn't be 1-for-1 acre, but it'd be roughly 1.4 acres to the acre exchanged to have the same benefit or habitat equivalency. Clark County agreed with those findings, and they felt that this was of a benefit to the Desert Tortoise by expanding the amount of acreage overall for their habitat. As well as this additional habitat that protects habitat for other species. The desert badger, the bighorn sheep, the cougar, what have you, have all been seen or identified as being located in this new area. Last Tuesday, Clark County reviewed this proposed amendment and approved it unanimously. And so we're here before you today to seek approval as well to amend our tortoise boundary. The easement boundary. The amendment also makes some adjustments to the legal description to correct some errors that date all the way back to 1995. All the maps that were in use match the maps that we use here at the city and at the county, but the legal description didn't match. So they corrected some errors in the legal description. As such, city staff is recommending that this item be approved. Item number 10 is a partner item with this, and Michael Mayes will discuss that at the appropriate time. The project initially, as I indicated, was under Sempra Generation. Sempra has since sold all of their solar interest in Nevada to Con Edison, and they do have representatives here if you'd like to hear from them, ask any questions. We're excited to have them as a partner.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and do want to recognize our representatives here. Even though the company's changed, the faces haven't changed. We've got Bryce and Marilyn and Lisa out there. Appreciate them seeing this through. There was a commitment when that happened that they would in fact do that, and it's been a lot of hard work. I know on the front end, just working with the county and then making sure that this happens. So. Bring it to council for any comments, questions. Mr. McManus.
Mr. Armitage, I don't know if this is something you want to answer or representatives with the company, but I'd like if you could go into a little bit of detail about what this will entail. It's not simply, well, this land used to be conservation area and now that land over there is conservation area. This will be a process to ensure that the desert tortoise will be relocated, right? Is that correct or not correct?
Well, under our existing Section 10 permit, and as well as our easement document, the easement document itself, and I believe we have attached the exhibit that goes with the easement document, there are certain protocols that must be followed whenever doing work in or near the easement. One of which is if you discover a desert tortoise, you need to contact a licensed person who's able to relocate that tortoise so that the poor little critter doesn't go into little critter heaven. And right now, the desert tortoises seem to be rather prolific. The Grid Lands project is getting close to being complete, and they have seen at least 10 little desert tortoises, no bigger than a silver dollar, scattering across the little roadways. And of course, they're hard to see. They look like rocks that are blown in the wind. But there are quite a few desert tortoises. So with this project, as they exercise their option, turn it to a lease and start construction, they will have a biologist on site, I believe. They have in their other projects to account for any desert tortoises they find and relocate them. For example, on the Copper Mountain 3 project, they actually located 5 desert tortoises and had them relocated to appropriate locations, either in our existing easement or other locations throughout the county where they'd like to see the population improve.
Okay. And again, I know you touched on it. This, as you say, has already received approval at the county level. But when these types of decisions get made, it's not simply a Boulder City decision. There are actually many layers that have to be addressed with this so that the restrictions that are on the land out there are adhered to. Is that also?
That's correct. The Boulder City Conservation Easement was established to satisfy what's called the Section 10 take permit with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They're very much a partner in all the activities that take place in Boulder City or elsewhere in the county under that permit. So all these amendments were done in consultation with Fish and Wildlife to make sure that they felt that this was good for the species and good for the county. And of course, Fish and Wildlife is not looking out for the best interest of the county, they're looking out for the best interest of Fish and Wildlife and the critters. And they felt that this was in the best interest of the critters.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Levitt.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to comment that this is another project. I talked about the River Mountain Loop Trail connecting with the Railroad Museum and how that's been kind of in the works for a long time. Well, this has been in the works a much longer time. In fact, Lisa and I were talking before the meeting, and when Alberto still worked for Sempra, which was about 8 years ago, I think this was the idea of it anyway, was put forth. And really the heavy lifting in all of this was done by Sempra, of getting jumping through all the bureaucratic hoops and getting all of the permission through the county. That took well over a year or longer, 4 years, excuse me. And so they invested, not only their time and effort, but a lot of money getting all of the different permissions that they had to get to do this. And so that was a Herculean task to accomplish that. So when the county gave us the unanimous thumbs up for that, that really was the biggest feat. For Boulder City, if people look at the map that you had up there, I mean, that tells the whole story, really, that we have a larger area for the desert tortoise and other different critters, as you call them, but other, I don't know if they're protected like the desert tortoise, but other animals. And I don't know if you mentioned a bird in there, but anyway, other animals. And also this gives Boulder City the advantage of having another solar lease to bring revenue into our city that is adjacent to Copper Mountain's other projects. So as I said earlier to the December folks when we were talking, this really is a win-win for them and for our city. So my congratulations to the many people who've worked so hard to bring this to fruition.
Any other questions, comments? All right, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move for approval for, are we just talking about?
Item number 9. Yeah.
Okay, bill number 1852.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Next is item number 10, matters pertaining to modifying the master plan and zoning maps to increase area for solar development. Mr. Mays.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael Mays, your Community Development Director. And as Mr. Armentrout already mentioned, this is directly tied to Agenda Item 9. So for City Council consideration this evening, you have 2 items that are related to the Copper Mountain Solar 5 project. This is impacting approximately 1,150 acres. You can see on the screen the area noted in yellow, which corresponds to the previous slide that showed the area in red. It's the same area. What is being considered is an amendment to the land management plan, specifically the land use designation for this area, from open lands conservation to manufacturing energy, and also the corresponding rezoning of the property from government open space to ER or energy resource. The Planning Commission held a public hearing regarding this matter on May 15th and recommended unanimously in support of amendment to the master plan as well as the proposed rezoning. As you consider this item tonight, part of the council's deliberation is establishing the findings that are required with any rezoning. They include the proposed amendment is in general conformance with the adopted comprehensive plan for the city. Obviously, with the amendment to the master plan, that brings it into conformance. But in addition to that, Section 7.2 regarding natural resources of the master plan states that the city should continue to support and promote opportunities as feasible for the location of renewable energy plants within the El Dorado Valley. The second finding is that the proposed amendment promotes the health, safety, morals, and/or general welfare of the city. And besides the findings that are in your staff report, I also note that Mr. Armentrout's presentation talking about the evaluation of the ecological resource study and the benefits to the tortoise as well as the other wildlife in the area would apply to that finding. So for your consideration this evening is a public hearing that's required for consideration of the master plan amendment and the rezoning. Consideration of Resolution 6949, which amends the city's master plan, and consideration of Bill 1849, which would rezone the property. And I can answer any questions.
Council, any questions or comments?
It was brought up in public comment at the beginning of the meeting, the use of this property or this particular area for recreational use. My understanding is that at this time, all of the land that is being proposed here is within the conservation area, is that correct?
It is within the conservation easement, correct?
Okay, and again, I'm just trying to clarify for the public that if it's within the conservation area, it is not closed off to the public, but I believe the public is restricted to only using existing roads if they're using any vehicles in that area?
Roads and/or trails, correct?
Okay. You can still walk in the desert if you would like, but as far as vehicle traffic goes, they are restricted to what's already there and not to the open desert. That's the point I'm trying to make on it.
Correct.
Okay. Were there any other prohibited activities within the conservation area?
Prohibited activities, it severely limits the types of uses that are permitted, principally to the conservation and recreation. But in the El Dorado Valley, as outlined in our master plan, it allows for obviously conservation, energy production uses, and recreational opportunities.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments? If not, this is a public hearing. We'll open the public hearing on this item. Anyone wishing to speak? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and come back, and I will go ahead and move for approval of Resolution 6949 and Bill number 1849.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. We don't need anything more on that, correct? All right, great job. Thank you. We really, really appreciate you being here tonight and all your hard work on this. Thank you. Next is item number 11, consideration of bill number 1850, an ordinance amending various titles on debt obligations.
That's me.
It's you.
Thank you, Mayor. Bill number 1850 is just essentially a cleanup item for our code. The debt limit ordinance was proposed as a ballot question in 2010, and it was put into Title II, and which was not the appropriate section of our code. Title II is for establishes departments within our code. And so we are proposing to move that particular ordinance to Title I, which is under administration, under financial policy, since the debt limit would apply to a financial policy of the city. And so staff is recommending approval.
And there is no language change here to speak of?
No, we're
No
just simply
substantive?
moving there's no language change whatsoever. We're simply moving the ordinance out of one chapter and into another.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move for approval of bill number 1850.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next is item number 12, consideration of bill number 1851, an ordinance creating a new Chapter 9 titled Administrative Services Department. Mr. Bryce Bolt.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Bryce Bolt, your administrative officer. You have before you for consideration bill number 1851, amending Title II and creating a new Chapter 9 titled Administrative Services Department. And the function of this is it will more accurately reflect the structure of the organization, clarify funding, responsibility of various functions, and it is budget neutral.
Council, any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move for approval of bill number 1851.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item number 13 is a request for City Council directive authorizing the city's staff to seek appraisals for property on Avenue G. Mr. Armtrout.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, Brock Carmentrout, your contracts real estate manager. Our city code, as well as the NRS, require that any time when a property is to be sold, that it's owned by the local government, that it has to be appraised. Our city charter specifically says that for any appraisal to be ordered, the city council has to first direct staff to do so. So we're here before you today to seek a directive to order an appraisal for the alleyway adjacent to 555 Avenue G for the purposes of eventual sale of the 840 square feet to the adjacent property at 555 Avenue G. A little bit of history. The owner of 555 Avenue G has received previously an encroachment permit from the Public Works Department to construct a CMU wall across the alleyway and then alongside the alleyway so that he could use the alleyway for parking. Subsequent to that, and without permits, a carport was constructed and some other appurtenances to the home were extended into the alleyway. More recently, he decided he wanted to sell the property, and when they did their title search and realized that, at least the potential buyer, that those improvements weren't on the property he was buying, the owner, Mr. Sterling, contacted the city to ask if he could buy the alleyway. City staff reviewed his request, determined that the alley really served just two properties. The southern property is being served off the alley extension off of Wyoming, and this property being served off of the turn on Avenue G, and determined it's no longer necessary for our street system. The process that we will go through is, upon your authorization, order two appraisals. The property will be appraised. An offer letter will be made to the adjacent property owner of what the higher of the two appraisals come in at, plus the cost of the two appraisals that he's required to also reimburse the city. Should he accept the offer, the city would then have a parcel map drawn up, and the adjacent property owner would also be required to pay the costs associated with the parcel map and any closing costs associated with recording the sale. Before a sale would be recorded, it would come back to the city council to approve the land sale agreement, and then it would be then eventually combined with his parcel, and then he could sell it with his home. So at this time, all city staff is requesting is the authorization to seek two appraisals for the alleyway adjacent to 555 Avenue G.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments? Mr. McManus.
You'd indicated that there had been an encroachment permit issued by Public Works. Had you reviewed that permit as far as what the reasons for the request were and what the basis of granting the encroachment were?
I haven't seen it. Have you seen it, Keegan? It was some time ago. We could look that up if you'd like to see it, but I haven't looked at it myself.
Yeah, I tried to find it, and, well, good luck with that, right? A concern I have is where this is located. When Boulder City was originally designed, these squares that we have, such as in front of this building and across our uptown area, were a feature that was designed into the city. And the alleyway that you're referencing there, that alleyway is represented in each of these squares. In other words, that pathway is part of the design of each of these squares that occurred. Now, I don't know what may have happened with this property owner, how it might have come about that, yeah, there's an alley next to my home and I'm going to go ahead and extend my house out onto that alleyway. But I did take a look at these other alleyways that exist in all of the squares in the uptown area. And this will be the only one that is not going to be there anymore. Again, I understand that this structure appears to have been there for quite some time now, was never properly permitted to build the structure there, is taking over city property or the use of city property for an extended period of time, and only now that the property is being put up for sale is some permission from the city being requested for it. But this takes away from the design of our uptown area from the original design plans that were put in place. This is also within the historic district. Had there been any conversation with our Historic Preservation Committee about this particular proposed sale or changes?
Mr. Mays?
Since no new improvements were proposed, and as you noted, Councilman McManus, these improvements have been in place for a very long time. It was not considered to be taken to the Historic Preservation Committee.
Okay, but this is a change. I mean, it's taking a public way and selling it into private ownership. I understand that this owner took it upon themselves to already do that without permission from the city. But again, we're affecting the master plan of the community that was used to build the community back in the early 30s. So I'm very concerned about, because a homeowner decided at some point, you know what, I need a little more space here, so I'm going to take some city land. And the homeowner may not have realized that this was actually part of the design of all of these squares, but that's in effect what it was. And it was also done without city permission. The structures were built without city permission, with the exception of the block wall. Is that correct, Mr. Armstrong?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
How many other alleyways are there in the, I know there's the one on the credit union side, which we saw in the photo, but.
Well, Avenue G and Avenue C have parallel alleyways. And then, of course, there are the alleyways through the alphabet streets going down to the high school, and then on the number streets.
But I mean, on the row of, Mr.
As those
McManus
four-
is talking about the blocks, so we've got Wyoming and Arizona Street between those two areas.
The two that are off of California that run by the Forge and by the Grace Community Church, those are still open alleyways. The two that come off Hotel Plaza that run next to, I can't think of the name of the business
The
that's
wood
there.
carving guy, and then
And the one next to Oak Lane, those are still there. These over here, they still exist in the state they were before until a structure was built on top of one of them. So as far as I could see, this is the only one that's being obstructed.
Other questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move for approval of, I changed my page, of this agenda item.
All right, that's item number 13. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay?
That motion carries with one dissent. Mr. McManus. All right, next is item number 14, presentation and update of the status of Boulder City Strategic Plan.
Thank you,
Lisa
Mayor and
LaPlante.
Council. How are you tonight?
Good.
Well, as you all recall, we adopted the strategic plan in December of 2018. And then in February of 2019, the Implementation Action Plan was adopted. Those are both located at bcnv.org/strat plan, in case anybody is looking at home. So let's take a look at where we are. Obviously, it's a 5-year plan from 2020 through 2025. We haven't gotten very far, but I do have some good news. We have made some headway as we've gone along. We have started tackling some of the ideas and strategies that were laid forward in Goal 1, Achieve Prudent Financial Stewardship. These are just a few of the strategies that have been not yet met, but we have taken steps to try to meet them. Even though this action plan doesn't really take effect until July 1, we wanted to start monitoring where we are so that we can make sure that as we go along, information is updated and residents can stay in touch with what's going on. So as you can see, the 2019-2020 budget was approved at the last meeting. We've taken a look at establishing that spreadsheet highlighting prices for special events. Of course, hired a purchasing manager. We're taking notes and keeping track of how that hiring manager is saving the city money. Goal 2, invest in infrastructure. We've been preparing a pavement evaluation. We've been taking a look at the facilities master plan and development, submitted a 10-year construction plan to the Regional Transportation Commission. And we did talk a little bit earlier about the Linear Park and Railroad Museum expansion. One of the nice things about Strategy 2 here is that we actually did get a funding component from RTC in their CIP, their capital improvement plan. We are going to receive $500,000 towards design and $500,000 towards construction of a road for the museum. It will be our road, but it is a financial commitment that we did receive in the CIP coming up. Of course, Oasis Park improvements were done earlier this year. Manage growth and development, a couple of items that we've taken on there. We've done more public outreach efforts. Some of you were involved in one of the workshops in May. We also had workshops in April that involved the community as well as business owners, trying to make sure that we're getting their input as we put together our economic development plan. And take a look at promote historic preservation. We've gotten a little bit of a start there. As part of the fiscal year 20 workshops, you approved the hiring of a historic preservation planner. I heard a rumor that we've got quite a few applicants so far, which is great news. So we are moving forward with taking a look at those. I think it's open for a couple more weeks. But taking a look at bringing somebody on board who can help us with our historic preservation mission statement and plan. And of course, approval of text amendments for the city code, which permitted the city to apply for CLG designation. And finally, Goal 5, sustain a high level of public safety services. Now, this includes 3 different departments, so there's a lot going on there. This includes the fire department, the police department, and the courts, as well as the city attorney's office. So there are some items that mix in with all of these. So as you take a look, it's kind of a mishmash of items that all of the departments have taken on, but it's a little more clear to see it in the online version. So again, I really highly suggest you go to that bcnv.org/strat plan so that you can take a closer look at that. And as I wrap this up, I will say that my goal is to return in September for another update, and then again in December. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Council. Ms. Levitt.
Lisa, in my briefing today, we talked about under manage growth and development that with respect to budget and resources available under several of these strategies, the answer was that no. And so if anybody else was interested in this, I thought you might want to explain why it's no, because we do have positions in that area, but I understand there are other resources that we're looking for. So,
and that's correct. I'm actually going to let Michael Mays take a crack at that one. He's got a little more input that makes a little more sense. Michael?
Certainly, with respect to strategy D that talks about historic preservation, one of the objectives there was the need for the historic preservation planner in order to accomplish those goals. However, with strategy C, when it identifies that the resources aren't available, in many cases what that's referring to is that elements which may require either a grant creation or spending money on other resources to support that objective haven't been budgeted yet. With several of those goals, they're programmed for the next several years. And so as each department is evaluating future considerations for budgets and programming those in to ensure completion of those.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Appreciate your presentation. I know we just passed the strategic plan, so there's obviously some work up time and ramp up time to get these things going, and I know that's why you'll be coming back to us in the future. But a lot of good things going on there. I really think those assessments of our infrastructure are critical, our utilities and our streets, and appreciate the fact that we're improving our parks, one of Boulder City's greatest assets, including our older parks, so like Oasis Park. We did Lakeview Park last year, and we've done others, and so that's fantastic. Thank you.
And I will say, I have to give credit to Bryce Bolt and to Al Noyola for the second screen that popped up. They really thought it would be ideal for us to be able to give that measurement as a dashboard so that you can see when I give these presentations where we are, even though we're still at 0. Next time, we'll be hopefully at 5%. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, we're on to item number 15, a presentation from our fire chief to provide the fire department's annual report. Chief Nicholson.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. For the record, my name is Kevin Nicholson, the city's fire chief, and tonight I am going to give a brief overview of the fire department's annual report. Just for everybody, the fire department does provide emergency medical transport, fire rescue, prevention, plan review, inspection, and education services for the citizens and visitors of Boulder City. We offer smoke detector battery replacement program, hands-only CPR, and public education programs within our schools, businesses, and civic groups. Currently, we operate out of one station, and that one station, we have 3 shifts. On each of those shifts, we have 6 firefighters that operate an engine with 2 people and 2 of the rescues with 2 people each. And as you know, just recently, we've started up our 3rd rescue program. In that 3rd rescue program, we're utilizing our reserve personnel for 12 hours a day to staff that 3rd rescue, and I'll be talking about that program a little bit more here in a little bit. As you'll notice on the bottom of the screen, I have listed that, of course, everything at the fire department, what we do and what we strive to do is to sustain that high level of public safety services. So that is our biggest goal and our mission and why we are here and what we do every day. As I mentioned, 3rd rescue program. Just in the first few short months, as I've reported before, Rescue 123, which is the 3rd rescue, has responded to 44 EMS calls. Of those 44, we've transported 36 patients to hospitals. Without the 3rd rescue program, those 44 calls would have been seriously delayed, and those 36 people that we transported, the delay in service would have been at least 15 to 20 minutes calling for help from one of our partner agencies. So just to touch base, I'm extremely excited about that program, and I believe as it continues to grow, as we move into the next fiscal year, I hope to come back and share even more success stories from the program, because I think it is really going to benefit the citizens and visitors by having that 3rd unit in service. So far so good, but we are still tracking the progress of that program. The other thing in emergency services that we've been doing is we have participated in the Advanced Stroke Protocol Pilot Program. We've been doing that for a few years now. It's been very successful. It's basically what we do is an advanced field screening. We receive calls, and if patients, if they have certain signs and symptoms that are leading towards a stroke, we identify those quickly and we get them to a proper facility that can manage those incidents. And from that pilot program that we did participate along with Henderson, it has led to this being a county-wide protocol. So I'm very proud of the personnel that we have and their participation, and I think it's going to do nothing but improve the services in Clark County as we move forward. So very proud of them for doing that. Station renovation, oh my gosh. It is moving slowly, but I'm very proud to announce that phase 1 is wrapping up. And for everybody out there, I want to let you know that we have transitioned the administrative offices back to the other side that you're used to. And so please utilize the old entrance. It's a little different. It is ADA compliant, a very nice entryway for those who are in a wheelchair. Finally, we have a nice entryway that is compliant. Although we're still moving boxes, we are over there. So if you want to stop by and see us, come to that door. We're back where we're supposed to be. So along with that, a portion of phase 2 was completed, and it has to do with the sand and oil separator out front that, and also with our drain system. I want to thank Public Works Utilities Department for all your help so far. We've found a lot of gremlins in this old station, and they've done a great job helping us fix a lot of things that need to be fixed. So we're moving forward. Hopefully we're all going to be done with everything within the next couple months is what I'm hoping, but we'll see what happens. Fire engine update. All the engineering and everything associated with it is complete. Hopefully it'll be traveling down the assembly line coming up next month with a delivery sometime this fall. I'll keep you updated as it progresses, but we're all excited about getting our new fire engine in place. And ironically, our other engine is in the shop right now getting fixed. So the sooner we get it here, the better off we're going to be. Next thing, dealing with grants, and I'm sorry I'm not hitting the button, but thank you back there. Pool pack cot replacement program. It was great that pool pack jumped up, and thank you, Bryce, for helping us with that. The department received $119,000 for the installation of 4 auto-loading medical transport cots. They have been installed and in place. We have a little photo with the guys there. It is a great piece of equipment. Not only does it save the backs of the firefighters and stuff lifting those cots, but it's a very secure method of loading patients. And while in transport, a very secure way to make sure our patients are on that cot and secure to the apparatus, just in case bad things do happen, accidents happen. But if we are in an accident, we want to make sure our patients are secure on that cot. And these systems are the best there is out there. So thank you, Pool Pack, for that. They are in place. That was a great improvement for us. The next thing I want to mention is Safer Grant. We did recently submit an application for a Safer Grant. And basically what the Safer Grant is for is it is a FEMA grant designed to help departments supplement and increase staffing levels for fire and emergency responses. What it does, it's a 3-year program. First year, it will support 75% of the salary and benefits of the personnel you want to hire. The second year is 75%. The third year drops to 35%, and then after that, the full cost of those salary and benefits fall back on the cities. But it is a great program, and in an effort to supplement our recent staffing approvals from all of you, I did apply. Hopefully, we'll hear something maybe later this month. If we are successful, the city will receive over $1 million over the 3-year period to help us supplement the 3 firefighters that we'll be bringing on board. So fingers crossed, hopefully that goes well, and I'll be able to report something exciting here in the near future. The other thing is, as I've discussed before, Medicaid reimbursement program. Year to date, the city's received approximately $463,000 in Medicaid reimbursements from the state. This is a great program that is allowing public safety entities that provide EMS transport services to receive additional funding because basically the way Medicaid works is the states receive funding from the federal government and then the states reimburse the local entities. What this does is it allows us to provide a report that illustrates our expenses associated with those transports, and it provides a little extra revenue for us. So I've been happy to provide Diane and everybody down there a little more revenue. So far, it's $463. Coming up this next year, we're hopeful to receive FY 18 and 19, which will be approximately $500,000 more. And then once we get caught up, we'll approximately be around the $350 range annually if everything works out and they don't change the rules on us. So as of right now, it's a great benefit for us in the city to increase those revenues. There's not much for me to share. Lisa just shared kind of where we're at as far as strategic plan. Some of the big things that we're starting up is we have provided an update of all the job specifications for the fire department. It's been several years since we've done that, so we've reviewed those and we're in that process, and so hopefully here in the very near future we'll have that project complete. And then the other component is the strategy 2 for us is ensure adequate staffing. I believe we're moving in the right direction with all of your help. We are adding those 3 additional personnel, which will allow us to implement our 3rd rescue program 24/7, 365 coming up this year. And so I'm excited about that. So both of those strategic plans are on schedule and moving forward. And so with that, at this time, I do want to say that I'm very honored to serve this fine community that we have, and also work with the great people, the men and women on the public safety team. We have a great team here in Boulder City, and you should be very proud of them. I know I am. So with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chief. We really appreciate the presentation, an excellent one, and you were true to your word. You kept it short. Appreciate all the service of the fire department and all you do for our community. And one of the things that was kind of highlighted to me in that presentation is the hard work you're doing to get outside funding. And I appreciate that as well. I know that I had sent a letter at your request to our Congress men and women, and Dina Titus, I believe, stepped up to send add her support to the SAFER grant application. And so, we don't know, but we're keeping our fingers crossed. And these outside funding sources, that and the Medicaid, have helped to defray a lot of these expenses, including, your update on the fire station improvements. That's a great thing for our city to have the help from outside agencies. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Mr. McManus.
As the brother of a former firefighter who's had multiple back surgeries, I think the grant from Pool Pact is excellent. I know from having attended some of the Pool Pact conferences that back injuries are one of the #1 problems for firefighters. So obviously they saw that and they made these grants available. And again, I will also congratulate you on reaching out to these other organizations to help with that funding. They may not realize it now, but I'm sure some of the firefighters after about 20 years are going to appreciate having that on hand.
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Councilwoman Levin.
I also thank you for your presentation. It was great, very informative, and also I think we all noticed that the grants that you're bringing in, that's terrific for our city. And I know I made this request of someone sometime, but I like pictures.
I know.
So next time we need
More
a
pictures.
before and after.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Next is our final public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak in final public comments? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Leo Garcia. I'm a father, a husband, a United States Air Force veteran, a veteran of Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and a veteran advocate. I belong to multiple local and national veterans organizations. I do mainly grassroots development for the state of Nevada at this moment, but my primary work is legislation on the state and local level, and as well as the federal, which requires me to travel across this great state as well as Washington, D.C. to educate our elected officials on veterans issues. I continuously boast how wonderful our city is, and I invite family, friends, elected officials to visit our city. But this past Memorial Day, I was very embarrassed when the MC asked if anyone from the Boulder City Council was there or the mayor. No one stood up. And I was quite embarrassed. I constantly boast how wonderful this city is, and I hope this doesn't happen again. This is not the first time it's happened. This has happened numerous times. So I just wanted to bring that up to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? All right, we'll close our public comment period and come to City Council for our City Council reports.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to respond. I was out of town on Memorial Day. I typically always attend those veterans events if I can. And Chuck Baker is a friend of mine, and he also asked me about it, and I explained to him that I was out of town. So I love supporting our veterans. I just wanted to comment again. I know that it was discussed in our meeting about the passage of AB 84. This is really a big deal for our city. And again, I'll bring up, I don't know if Larry left or if he's still here, but Larry Bender and Jill Lagan. I remember us talking about the Railroad Museum, I don't know how many years ago, in our Economic Vitality Commission meetings. And I know Larry had been successful in getting a grant for us to get some kind of conceptual renderings of what that would look like. And to see the pieces kind of fall into place. I know we went through a recession and different state legislators over the years that we have talked to, but the pieces fell into place this year. And I think this, in conjunction with the River Mountain Loop Trail and other exciting things we have going on in our city, is just great news. And thank you to our city manager, our communications manager, and other city staff who've worked so hard this legislative year and going up to Carson City and lobbying for this effort. So it really was a team effort, and it's just so gratifying to see this happen. So thank you and congratulations to everyone who is involved in this effort. And whoever our anonymous donor was who gave $1.3 million to the pool, thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Mr. McManus.
I would just like to remind everyone, tomorrow is our municipal election, and encourage folks to get out and participate in their community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I also want to thank all those involved in getting the funding, we hope. It's still a lot of work yet to be done, but that passage of the bill is a huge step for us, and it represents a big win for the city for lots of hard work. Jill is in the back there. We really appreciate your hard work. Peter Barton wasn't mentioned by Peggy, but he's been instrumental in that, our own city staff. And I know there's a lot of other people in the background as well, in addition to Larry Bender who was mentioned. Please thank those of in your groups that have helped to contribute to that. I know we're going to still be active, even though the legislative session's over, to make sure that we remain a priority. There's a lot of talk in those committee meetings, and they don't necessarily always turn into commitments or timelines that you want them to turn into, and so we're going to continue down that track. And also our lobbyist, Lisa Foster, put in a lot of hard work on that, so appreciate everyone's work involved in that. And yes, tomorrow is election day. Great day for Boulder City. We've had a great early voting turnout, it appears. Hopefully we'll keep that up. Congratulations to all the candidates, whatever the outcome. Appreciate your hard work and your willingness to throw your hat in and be involved in our community. And tell all your friends to get out and vote. And I think that's it. Good night, everybody. Thanks for being here. Meeting adjourned.
When they do that, because they have those veterans services out there, and we're never invited.